Today is Thursday, so Steve Wilks spoke. Steve Wilks, we'll call him Sideline Steve for the rest of the year. And here's his reaction on the most over-discussed thing in the history of ever, which is Steve Wilks coming out of the booth and going down to the sidelines.
Bigger deal out of it than it needs to be honest. But I just want to be able to communicate with the guys a little bit more during the game. You know, certain things that I'm seeing, I'd rather be able to talk to them directly than, to communicate with coaches. I think our coaches do a great job, number one, throughout the week, but also in-game adjustments. That's one of the things I've really, pride ourselves on and how we communicate as a staff and making the right things throughout the game. So it's just really with me, just wanting to be able to communicate with those guys a little bit more.
I tell you what, I wonder about this. First off, I agree with the first thing he said, that too big of a deal is being made about this. However, I also look at it and go, well, but you're doing it. Like, we talked about it for 3 or 4 weeks, and then you got to the bye, and you're doing it, which means there's a reason. You're not doing it to placate everybody, right?
Well, I hope not.
You're doing it because there's a reason that you think that competitively this will be better. And therefore, are we making too big of a deal out of it? Maybe, but is it a thing? Yeah, because you said so.
Right.
You're doing it.
You're doing it, and it's a thing. And I wonder if he would have felt like he needed to communicate with his players more if they hadn't lost 3 games in a row. When you're 5-0, did you really feel at that point like you needed to communicate more with your players? Because if that was the case at 5-0, with your defense playing great, and I know the Ram game was a little bit lopsided in terms of you got a gift pick that helped preserve the game and all the rest of it, but you were 5-0, and there was no talk about communicating better with your players. So you lose 3 games in a row, and now you feel like you need to communicate more with your players?
But you know how human beings work. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Well, guess what? It's broke. So fix it.
Right.
It's broke.
Is this the fix, though?
I don't know.
I don't either, but it feels...
Not on its own, of course.
It feels to me a little bit like, and I mentioned this yesterday, where you've got a leaky roof, and instead of fixing the leak in your roof, you just get a bigger bucket to catch the drip. So you still have a leaky roof, but now we got this new shiny bucket. I'll tell you what, this new bucket we have, it can hold twice as much water from the leaky roof. So... problem solved.
Right, but what would we as a group, a fan base, if you will, what would we point to if not the changes? The 2 most discussed things through the bye week have been Steve Wilks to the sideline and Chase Young. Why? Because that's new. That's new. That's what's new. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I get what he's saying. I don't think it's so not worth talking about. I do think it's not worth making a big deal about. For me, I would like to see maybe those words we use with the Warriors feel like we can use them with the 49ers, because they do not feel connected. And if this helps that, great. Then I think it's discussion worthy. I do not think it in any way, shape, or form can be the end-all, be-all. There's no way that we're at a parade in February and people are like, dude, week 10, Steve Wilks came down to the sideline and saved the season. No one's saying that. But I'll tell you what, Eric Armstead went public and was like, yeah, I think this will be better. Like, we want to come off the field. And, for lack of a more detailed way of saying it, we want to come off the field and talk to Steve. That's what the players are feeling. Well, if they want that, then... you got it.
Yeah, there you go. And if that is the difference maker into fixing a defense that's been a little bit porous over the last few weeks, then so be it. If it's that easy of a fix, then that's great, because the other major fixes are much tougher when you start talking about a new defensive coordinator or new personnel or a new scheme or many of the things that are much more dramatic. More dramatic than just bringing a guy from the 5th level down to the field. If that fixes it, then great.
That would be awful if some kind of major change was being discussed in the middle of a season.
Right.
That obviously means that everything is really, really out of whack, and I personally don't believe that we're there yet, but we're going to learn a lot on Sunday. You're listening to 95.7 The Game, KGMZ FM and HD1 San Francisco, always live on the free Odyssey app, Twitch and YouTube, powered by First NorCal Credit Union. Here's more from Steve Wilks, further explaining why he would like some face-to-face communication with his players.
To be quite honest, I want to talk to all the guys because I have certain thoughts that are going through my mind as I'm sitting here going through the game and trying to call things, and I'm looking at my call sheet and I say, man, okay, I'm thinking about this. Well, now I can go right over to the D-line and say, okay, I'm looking to change this up next series. It could be with the back seven for us, the pass concepts where we may be getting hurt on a certain route, and, it could be empty, and I want to change this. So, again, it's just a little bit more dialogue coming directly from me.
Okay. Now, when you hear that, I bet a lot of us have the same thought. If you're going to sit here and tell us all the reasons why it's better to be on the sideline, why the hell weren't you there to begin with?
Totally.
Now, I have no idea. I know Steve's been a head coach. I have no idea where he's parked himself every year in the past, or if it has been a little bit of both in his lengthy career as a successful NFL coach. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe someone can fill us in on that. Maybe we can ask Steve, have you ever been on the sideline before as a defensive coordinator? But these are funny answers for that reason. And this is why, and I'm not saying we're ever going to know, because major teams are not going to tell us all of their laundry. Kyle Shanahan already did it once 3 weeks ago when he said, well, Steve knows that he messed up. And when I take that statement and this statement, and now you start to hear him go, wow, this is why I'm moving to the sideline. And you're like, well, so why didn't you before?
Yeah.
It all says the same thing to me. I'm sorry, there's more going on here than we realize. That is my opinion. I can't tell you what it is, but I very much feel like there is, to this point, some sort of a disconnect, whether it's between Kyle and Steve, whether it's between Steve and his own players, whether it's Steve and the scheme.
There it is. There it is, Mark.
I don't know.
You just took the answer right out of my mouth.
It's something.
I think it's Steve and the scheme. And the scheme was a scheme that was here from Robert Saleh, and D'Amico Ryans came in and ran it great. And now Steve Wilks comes in, and it's not the scheme that he necessarily has devised. And so it's taken him some time to learn it and taken him some time to figure out how to make it work. And you said something about a week or two ago that I think is absolutely spot on in terms of the defensive problem, and it's the mismatching of the pass rush and the coverage. When the pass rush is getting home, the coverage is playing off. And when the coverage is playing on and they're playing tight, the pass rush isn't getting home, and so the tight coverage is getting beaten. So it's a question of how do you marry the pass rush? And if it's the blitz, and they're not blitzing any more than they did last year, it's about 21% of the time, which is about where it was last year. So they're not blitzing more, but when they're not getting home, are the Niners playing too soft? They play a lot of 3 deep zone. They don't play a lot of press man. And so when you're playing zone and your pass rush is not getting home, you can't cover for 3 and 4 seconds when you're playing zone, or when you're playing man, guys are going to break free. And when you bring extra people, that's when you get, like in the Ram game, it's a lot of quick passes. So it doesn't matter if you rush 5 or 6 guys. If the ball's out in 1.5 seconds, you can't get home even if you bring 7 guys.
Yep.
So it's the mismatch of the pass rush and the coverage that they have to figure out.
You ever play with one of them squirrely people like back in middle school or high school, actually, with how much you coached? I'm sure you've seen, these people whose legs kind of both go the same direction at the same time?
Yeah.
Like uncoordinated.
Right.
Not trying to make fun. Some people are coordinated, some are not athletically. The defense looks like an uncoordinated athlete right now. You either both legs are going in the same direction at the same time, or they're going in opposite directions at the same time, instead of doing what a right leg and a left leg do together. You go, then we go, and we're going to do this, and we're going to make a concert together. I'm not a defensive coach. I can't snap my fingers and tell you how to fix that. That's their job. But that's the problem. The problem is this whole thing is disconnected. What I don't know is if that disconnect also goes to a deeper level, because I am not comfortable when coaches start throwing other coaches under the bus in front of microphones because you don't see that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? It was innocuous enough to where it didn't feel personal. Maybe it just slipped out, but he knows he messed up. I'm still stuck on that. And it makes me wonder what's going on here. Do you know what I mean? Like, okay, here's maybe a bad analogy, but it's the first one that popped in my mind. If you ever get pulled over and if anybody's ever been popped for drunk driving, am I supposed to believe this is the first time that you've ever gotten into a car?
Ever.
After drinking? I'm supposed to believe you've never done it before and you just got caught the first time. I have a hard time believing that. So if Kyle Shanahan is going to go to a press conference and willfully put Steve Wilks out there for the media to go after, I think it's hard for me to believe that they haven't been barking at each other behind the scene a little bit here and there.
Or that he hasn't been disappointed before in a play call.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like. It wasn't personal, but
it was professional, which is just as bad in that business. And that's a good point because
it's a different one, man.
If that was the first time that he didn't like a call that Steve Wilks made, if he decided to go to the media and say what he said the first time that he was unhappy with the Steve Wilks call, that's bad leadership from Kyle Shanahan.
That's just being a jerk.
Totally.
It's being a jerk. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think even to do it at all is maybe not being a jerk. That might be too harsh, but I did say before, and I'll stand by it, that's bad leadership when you put that out there because, the majority of us who watch football, we could look at that call and say, that wasn't a good call. I don't understand that call. And Kyle could have gone out of his way to defend his own coach and say, well, it's something that we're going to look at. We're going to look at the film. And he could have cliched that to the back burner.
That's what you do.
But he didn't.
Right.
He put gas on the fire.
How many times has Steve Kerr, so far this year, 9 games, have you ever been like anywhere near this where Steve's like, Andrew knows that he's playing like crap. You're not going to hear him say that.
Yeah, you will. 5:00. Steve Kerr.
Andrew knows that he has not played well in a year and a half.
Did we lose you?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm here.
You're not going to say that. Is it true? Yeah. Something doesn't look quite right. And I know we've all made the point of like, yes, the outlier was actually the amazing Andrew a year and a half ago, but he hasn't looked like this. I would also argue that this stretch of Andrew Wiggins is about as bad as he's looked as a Warrior.
Yeah.
So, and yes, Steve knows that. Andrew knows that. Analytics department knows that. Mike Dunleavy knows that. Don Nelson is high and knows that.
Wow.
Okay?
I'd take offense at that, but you're probably right.
Yeah. So high! So we all know that. But you're not going to come say it when someone asks because you're all in a foxhole together and you have one another's back until it gets really out of hand.
Sure. Especially on the heels of such a nice moral victory as last night.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't think that's what happened. I really don't. Just looking in Kyle's eyes when he did that, I don't think he was like, this is my moment to really tell the world what's happening between our offense and our defense in this building.
No, but Kyle runs hot.
Yeah, but was it just, did he just like, this is not a brand new coach. This guy's been doing this for a long time, and they're well aware that when you go to a press conference, you've got to be ready with your walls have to be up. So did Kyle just completely lose himself for a moment? Or was this like something where he's like, I'm just going to put it out there, and we're going to let the media feed?
Yeah. Sometimes you got to keep it real. And in this case, Mark, it was pretty easy to see that was a bad call. It was a bad call by Steve Wilks to go 0 blitz.
No doubt.
On that play in that spot with Minnesota having no timeouts at the end of the half. So could Kyle have done a better job of soft shoeing it and soft pedaling it and back burnering it? Sure, he could have, but he chose that opportunity to not do that. And he kept it real. And Steve knows that.
I bet Steve is not thrilled that he kept it real.
I would also bet that Steve Wilks is not on the coaching staff next year.
That's an interesting statement.
And I'm just looking at Steve's his resume. It's
Steve, did we lose you?
2 years, 2 years, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 3, 2, 3, 2, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. That's Steve Wilks' career.
Yeah. Well,
so I'm playing the percentages.
Life of a coach. But yeah. I mean,
it's
you may well be right. If they rally and they win the Super Bowl, he's back. But although, then maybe he gets a head coaching gig. I don't know.